Welcome. This will be my video on Telltale's The Walking Dead Michonne, a mini-series from 2016. I want to start by noting that the game itself is rated M for mature, so will this video be. I'm gonna start with a review that contains zero spoilers for this or anything else Walking Dead media, and then get into what I call the thoughts section, where I discuss spoilers for this game. I'm not spoiling any other... I don't think I'll be spoiling any... you know what? Tell you what. I will spoil the ones that came before, I think. You know what? I will make up my mind by the time I reach the thoughts section and let you know then. I did manage to find things to love about this, but on the whole, I don't quite love it. But before I get into that, I spent a little bit of time with the definitive edition of Telltale's The Walking Dead. You know, so far I've been playing these off the original versions, but I got all of every Walking Dead game that I have, I got on sale. But the definitive edition, part of the reason I got it was for those developers' commentary videos that the Steam page, store page, promises. Turns out those don't work in the game anymore. They are, as I record this, they are free on YouTube. So that's nice. I don't think the Steam store page, to this day, should promise developers' commentaries. I'm not the first person to point this out. At least one other person I saw on Steam said, they bought it for those, and they were frustrated. So I haven't played them. The only other thing I have to say about the definitive edition, I'm not making an entire video on it. I've heard that certain things are different about the main game, but it doesn't sound substantial enough for me to play and do a separate review. If you want to hear about that, you will have to look elsewhere. But yeah, I did very much enjoy the art gallery, the concept art. And, it's neat to have a music player and character models in 3D with voice lines and such. That's, I'm not unhappy that I spent money on it. Once again, it was it was like 90% off or something. I just didn't want anyone to buy that one not knowing that the developer's commentary is not, does not require you to buy that. Yeah, the definitive edition. Anyway, that will almost definitely be the last thing I say about the definitive edition. The rest of what I say is going to be about, in this video, is going to be about this game. So, mea culpa. I fucked up. This game came out before seasons 3 and 4 of the main, so after season 2. I wrote it down, I checked, I double-checked, I forgot, triple-check, and here we are. I fucked up the order. I only just finished playing it now. As soon as the very first time I fired up the game, I saw 2016. Oh, shit, I forgot that. So I'm going to try to be fair to this game in this video. I am not going to rant too much if this works out. I will say, I don't know if it's because the ending was fucking perfect in the final season. I'm not spoiling it here, don't worry. I definitely will say my feelings about this game is not based on the fact that I play it, because obviously there's stuff in both seasons 3 and 4 that are not in this. Obviously, it came out before those did. That's not a I can't stand when people review something from the before times and they're like, I don't know, it doesn't have this thing that I'm used to today, and that means it's bad. Like, it's fine to note that it lacks that thing and that you find it frustrating, but a negative review. So that's not what I'm doing here. There are other reasons why this is not the most positive of reviews. But yeah, I think it might be the fact that I played it after the perfect ending. But honestly, I wouldn't rule out that it just is not quite as good as the main seasons. And or rather, that I would have felt that regardless of when I played it. And I'm a little bit relieved that I did fuck up the order, because I can't say for sure that I would have been as excited by seasons 3 and 4 if I had played this after season 2, because I gotta say, I mean, it's not as much of, I do maintain that 400 Days is still worse, but I was more disappointed by this. Playing 400 Days, like, as soon as I realized, oh, we're doing, it's a short game, and there's a ton of, compared to the other, well, short game in general, pretty much. But yeah, much shorter than any of these other games. Like, even this one, this is like 4 hours. 400 Days is like an hour and a half, and it jumps between all these different perspectives in a way that I just did not think worked well. That one is overall worse, but I was more disappointed. Yeah, shit, I already said that. Yeah, I wasn't super disappointed by 400 Days. Maybe I would have been if, like, hypothetically, if I had played these back when they first came out, and playing 400 Days, I wasn't sure if they were going to make more seasons, then I would have been disappointed. But yeah, this felt a little bit like they just weren't sure where to go after season 2, and maybe also were like stress testing, like seeing, okay, well, how much do we have to do to get people to come back and buy more of these? I saw at least one person, I believe it was on Steam, just, call this, "We have Walking Dead at home." I think that is it for the preamble. So, right, as usual, played it on PC. One thing I definitely will say, the plot. I appreciate that this has a different, like, this is the most different from the rest, as far as plot goes, of the entire Telltale, Walking Dead universe. I appreciate that in some ways 400 Days is also very different, but, it's these so short snippets that you just don't have a chance to get that deep into any of them, so based on that, I've mentioned in some of the other videos, I do think the 4 seasons, I get why it ended up like that, but I wouldn't rule out that it might have benefited if they were more different from each other. But then, I don't know. I mean, playing this, maybe they just didn't know how to tell a story that was very, very different from, because this just is not that compelling. And I think I do want to really acknowledge, I get what they're trying to do with the story that we get in this game, and I don't think that on paper it's terrible. I get why they got as far, and, like, I don't know if they realized that it just wasn't as good as the later ones. I mean, maybe they did, or maybe it was just, audience response, but they righted the ship for certainly season 4, and in my opinion also season 3. I guess, see, the thing is that, yeah, this is a good place to talk about. So you are indeed playing as Michonne, which is one of those, what are those called again? Double-sided, double-edged blades, because on the one hand, she is understandably a fan favorite. She is one of the coolest. I have not read the comics. I've seen a bunch of panels, so I recognize the artwork and such. but I have watched the first. Let's see, is that a? I've watched enough of the show so far that I am familiar with Michonne. And yeah, like this was actually one. Maybe that's part of the disappointment. I was really excited for this one. This does not require you to be familiar with her already, but it definitely, like, I can't even imagine it. I don't think it would hit that hard if you just are not familiar with her at all. It's one of those things where, because these games are technically parallel to the comics, it means that this is a part of Michonne's story that, like, so again, haven't read the comic, but if I understand correctly, basically there is a part of the comics where this would slot in, but it's just not a story that we were told in the comics, something along those lines, which, yeah, the it feels a tiny bit like they were worried that they wouldn't be able to get enough players if they didn't feature someone so beloved from the comic, which, like, I thought they were doing well on the first two. Like, from what I understand, those games did well. I just should fucking sort of check right now, but they do capture a lot of what we love about Michonne. And it is a story that feels like it more or less fits her. It was the kind of thing that, from watching the show, yeah. And some have said that they really did not like the major characters here. I understand. I didn't personally really have a problem with, like, there are some that we find despicable, but it tends to be that those are the ones we're meant to find despicable. There is at least one that we are meant to sympathize with, and some people found that that character was just not appealing enough. Yeah, I understand why. Wasn't really my personal experience. I kind of sat there waiting for that character to say or do something where I felt like, okay, that made people hate, which, I've only played through it once. Maybe one of the other branches is what made people hate her. I couldn't say. But I would definitely say that I was not super invested. Like, I wasn't in 400 Days either, but we spent so little time with the characters in that one that, like, no wonder. But this, like, I mean, the entirety of this is about the length of a third of seasons 1, 2, or 4. I get half of season 3, maybe, thereabouts. And in each of those, like, if I only played a third of one of those or half of season 3, yeah, like, I would still be super invested, so, yeah. I think that does bring us to, yeah, so, after I finished my video on season 3 of the game series, I did realize there were a couple of things that I neglected to mention, so I will put them here since technically this, I don't know, maybe some part of my subconscious was like, you should save this because you fucked up the order. So I forget if I'm pretty sure the first one, oh, never mind. I don't remember exactly when, but it's in one of these. They added, maybe it did appear in the first one. I just remember it as not being there, but it might have been the second rather than this. But in one of these, they added this thing where, how, oh shit, right. For those who haven't, what I say in this video is building on what I've said in the videos on the other games. So some of the things I say are based on, you don't have to have watched those videos, but if you don't know anything about these games, at least some of what I say in this video is going to be confusing, but these videos get so long even when I don't repeat myself, so I try not to repeat myself. Yes, so yeah. I forget which, but one of these added that you can now just click a dialogue option if silence is a valid option instead of waiting. It's not that you have to wait long, but yeah, that's a neat little thing. Yeah, I don't think there's very much to say about stuff like features. I would definitely say this had several of the silliest uses of, this was before they changed this was back when they were still doing that thing where the QTEs basically tended to boil down to, okay, now tap Q until you fill the box and then press E once. And in this one, like, there's just a couple of times where it's like, really, you're adding it for this? More so that, there were, it happened in some of the others as well. The camera is, static like it was before the fourth season, or not completely static, but you don't personally really control it. And this also has a few of the most awkward, like where you'll sort of have to be walking toward the camera, in a way that just, yeah. And, I appreciate that they were definitely trying to avoid invisible walls. And I think this might have the least number of invisible walls outside of the fourth season. Accounting for game length, I mean. And the thing is that part of how they get there is that there are still a lot of walls. Like, you can't walk around that much in this, but you tend to be able to see, oh, okay, yeah, I can't walk through here because there's something blocking my path, but yeah, this comes close to being essentially a visual novel with some, more dynamic gameplay, but yeah. And certainly, like, I wouldn't say there's even one puzzle in this. There are a couple of tasks, but yeah, we're essentially left with the dialogue choices, and so I've only played through this once, so I cannot say. Some really felt like there were not enough differences, and they didn't feel like their the dialogue choices they chose in dialogue really changed anything. I was personally basically okay with it, but yeah, I was not as invested, as emotionally engaged, and yeah, despite loving Michonne. And I do appreciate, Michonne. So, it is Black History Month. Michonne, strong black character, strong female character, and, you know, that's as much of a segue as you're getting for me recommending the recent Cat Black video, fairly recent Cat Black video. What was it called again? I'm sorry, it's my memory and my wrist to sort of look it up, but something along the lines of people who post my words but don't give my name. Something along those lines. Really, really excellent. Yeah, I did think that, considering the game length, I was fairly happy with how much this let me wield her machete. It is still not, these. I'm really, really relieved that these games never did go full, like, Resident Evil, Left 4 Dead 1 or 2, Contagion, that sort of thing, where it is very heavily action, Okay, early Resident Evil is not super actiony compared to the later ones, but, those are less about, like, this is very much dialogue choices and such. But yeah, that was one of the things I was really looking forward to. And yeah, it was indeed cool getting to use her machete. And I think that pretty much... Yeah, there are some really cool walkers here. And let's see. So there's this thing where Michonne will every so often see something specific. And I don't think I really want to give away what it is before I get into the spoiler section, but some people really disliked that choice, and I definitely do think there are issues with it, but yeah, I can't really discuss them without spoiling, so it will have to be in the spoiler section. And yeah, the graphics are around the level of season 3. And I did appreciate, they tried to fit in, they don't do quite as much as season 4, but they do try to fit in some, frames from the comic. And it's basically like, when an episode of this game starts, you get some panels from the comics. And yeah, I thought that worked as sound design continues to be on point, never fails in these. And the music is still really, really great. And I kind of fucking love the theme song. Yeah. So the games, now that I've played all of them, yeah, they never really get, like, punishing in difficulty. Like, they could essentially be the first thing you play. Like, if you have decent hand-to-eye coordination from something other than video games, and you have the patience to do, because like the part of this of all any of these Telltale Walking Dead games, the parts that are challenging, it saves right before and right after. Like there are other parts where it doesn't, where like I think it was especially in the first one. I think there was one time where I went like 30 minutes before triggering an autosave, but none of that was me, going around gathering items, trying to figure out puzzles, that sort of thing. It was not that if I had died 29 minutes into that 30-minute chunk that I would have had to do all that over, or rather there was no way for me to die 29 minutes into that. It was a part of the game where there was no way for me to die. So this is one of those where the achievements are just beating the game. You will 100% the achievements if you beat the entire game, which, as already mentioned, 4 hours, not difficult. Not a lot. Still, a few graphic glitches. Did not run into any bugs, but yeah, every so often, something will clip through something else. That sort of thing. Didn't happen terribly much. I did appreciate the setting. Basically, it's not a spoiler to say, Michonne almost right away finds herself on a boat. And yeah, like that was, I really appreciated, that's not something that the others overused, like, yeah, I quite appreciated. And yeah, the level design isn't bad. Like, there's certainly pretty decent environmental storytelling. Yeah, I think that that's it for the spoiler-free. So, yeah, overall, it is 7 machete chops out of 10. It's not terrible or anything, but it's not one, like, hypothetically, if I at some point did decide to replay several of these, this and 400 Days are the only ones that I would for sure strongly consider skipping, at least, and yeah, that brings us to the, if my computer is willing to respond, that is, the thought section. There we go. So, I will for now, not spoil. I'll let you know if I change my mind. But for now, I'm not spoiling the other, not even the ones that came before. Because, like, hypothetically, maybe you get this, it is standalone. You could play this, this could be the only piece of Walking Dead media you engage with at all, and you'd be fine, So yeah. I think I'm gonna do it more or less chronologically and just cover stuff as we go. But yeah, so the very, very start is Michonne moving through these flashbacks, and then, she puts the gun to her temple. And I did also really appreciate, like, they knew what fans of Michonne would want. So we have the tragic backstory, and we have the badassery. These are, yeah, it's not a spoiler to say, in that regard, it hits the ground running more than the others. It's meant to, The others, I mean, one thing is that most of them have more time, but it's also that, yeah, you tend to play as a character who's either not as much of a badass, or at least isn't at the very start of that game. But yeah, the it goes back and forth between where she really is and where she, where her trauma takes her. And I want to make it absolutely clear that I personally think it is extremely important to have depictions of PTSD that have sympathy for those who suffer with PTSD. And I think if not for certain things, this would be a really, really great case of that, because it captures certain aspects impeccably. Michonne has her PTSD genuinely make her sometimes struggle to remember where she is or what her situation is. And that manifests in the game by the level design and clothing and the, beings around you changing. And, she keeps flashing back to this traumatic event every so often, and, sometimes she's triggered, and I use that term unironically, yeah, like, hypothetically, this should work really, really well. And it even, yeah, she's suicidal when Pete finds her, I agree with, I saw at least one person, I think, again, Steam review pointed out, the flashbacks interrupt the flow. And it sounds like a terrible criticism. Listen, I appreciate this. Sometimes you do something in a game that, like, okay, that may not have been what the viewer or the player wanted, but it's right for the game. But I do think, I don't know. It's in part the fact that a lot of the time there's not much development. You're kind of just seeing a few seconds or maybe minutes more of, and they're at the end, they're still there. It's just that she chooses to not go to them anymore, or in my branch anyway. I don't know. It's there's a lot of flashbacks for a game that's only 4 hours. If it was twice as long and had the same amount of flashbacks, I don't think it would bother me. And I do appreciate that certainly they make it clear from right away. Like, hypothetically, if you were buying this back in the day, you bought episode 1, like, you could probably pretty quickly tell if you wanted to buy episodes 2 and 3 as well, or if there was too much flashback, but yeah, like, it just, I guess I've made my point there. But yeah, and it's genuinely, it's a very different place for the player character to start than the other games. And the fact that, yeah, so I guess what I'll say is there is a major element in each of the others has at least one major element that is not present here, and where, as I've mentioned in some of the other videos, I felt like there was a little bit too much of them doing the same thing. Like, I guess I've maybe already said in at least one of the other videos, but ultimately this is a series where it doesn't really feel like they had planned out all of them. It feels like when they made the first one, they weren't sure they were going to make even one more. And then the same thing with the second one and even the third one. Then obviously when they made the fourth one, they knew this is it. We're not making any more. But that doesn't have to be a problem. Sometimes it works incredibly well. But other times, yeah, like it felt a little bit like they were scared to move too far outside of what the first one did. And so, yeah, I love these games. I love the 4 seasons, and I've found stuff to love about this and 400 Days, but I think, like, if there were one thing I would change, I think just a tiny bit more deviation would have been great. But once you realize, oh, this is not going to go very far away from this, overall thing, yeah, what they did with it was amazing. But yeah, I appreciated that here, this is very, very different from those. And I do think that this idea, because, like, so again, I'm not spoiling other Michonne media, but yeah, she is a character who will sometimes struggle with how she relates to other survivors, non-walkers in this zombie apocalypse. And yeah, like, I do really appreciate that they fit that in here. I was a tiny bit worried that they were going to try to make this too much like the 4 seasons, and yeah, I am glad that they did not do that. Yeah, now that I'm in the spoiler section, I mean, this does not feature, well, let's see, I guess, okay, I need to word this carefully. There are major characters in the 4 seasons that, like, hypothetically could have appeared in this that do not. And I really appreciate that. I think it's very smart to make something so standalone. And that also, yeah, technically 400 Days could work as standalone. Right now, I actually forget. I think that might have been one of those where if you don't own season 1, you cannot get 400 Days. Like, it's not, well, let's see. I guess, was that back when we were still calling them expansion packs? I forget if that if that was supposed to be a standalone expansion pack or, an add-on for... Anyway, yeah, I think that might just about cover the... yeah. I thought it worked that over the course of this, the way that I'm shaping Michonne is based on whether or not I think she's ready, or whether, what I want. I try to make her ready to open up to other people. That was how, yeah. And the fact that, yeah, she lost her 2 girls, or, maybe technically we don't know for sure what happened to them because she wasn't able to go back and look for them. Or she did, but they weren't there anymore, something along those lines, and, at one point in this, and for the rest of the game, you are trying to protect the, yeah, yeah, I guess is maybe the second half of this game is trying to protect these 2 kids, and I thought that worked as this, as a conflict that I wanted to, so yeah, I did appreciate that. So when Pete showed up, or rather, yeah, when Michonne put the gun to her head, I had her put down the gun. I mean, I figure she would probably, there would have been something, like maybe she would have started, if I had told her to pull the trigger, she would have started to, and then Pete would have shouted, no, stop, or something like that, because, like, be a really short game otherwise, but that would be kind of funny if they were like, do you not want to play this? Like, there's more to it. You should probably say, no. But yeah, I wanted to get her away from thinking like that. I wanted to give her hope. So that was, but yeah, I accepted Pete's hand, and to get up, not in marriage or anything. And I tried to find a balance between, I didn't want him to be like Don Quixote or something, like over, just, yeah. I said, listen, all I hear is static. But then I did hear a voice, and I told him, yeah, I heard it this time. And yeah, I expressed hope when talking to him, but I was also careful to not let it get to a place where we're risking our own safety for static on a radio, I tried to talk Oak into having a little bit more hope, but also tried to tell him, yeah, listen, we got to be careful. Pete is, we have to keep an eye on him so that he doesn't, so that it doesn't get out of control. And let's see, I think that does get us to I think the next choice is when we arrive at the what's it called? The place. And yeah, let's see. There's the yeah. So we get there, and the yeah, I thought it worked well that, we find some people who were executed. These were not killed by walkers. They were not, killed because, oh, otherwise they'll turn. No, they were executed. And so, as soon as we see Randall, like, we're like, this is the guy, isn't it? He's executing people. And yeah, I put a little bit of candy into the bag, but when Greg and Sam arrived, I told them they could just take the bag. When Randall showed up, I tried telling him that I didn't know Sam, which evidently she was upset by, but I mean, I was kind of thinking, like, if he accepts that I'm not with Sam, I mean, I'm not sure he's not gonna free me, but maybe I will, if he doesn't think of me as a thief, maybe there's a better chance he'll listen to me. Maybe I could try to get her out of the situation. Like, I did almost immediately feel like, okay, I really want to try to keep Sam and Greg safe, She was the character that a lot of people said they just could not stand, or several people. I read several reviews that said that. And yeah, I don't know. I understand that, people felt like, well, what has she done for Michonne? I don't know. I mean, maybe it was just my branch. I really didn't think she was that bad. Like, you understand, yeah, she has a family to take care of, And I think that does get us to the, yeah, with the, let's see, what was the next thing? I think the next thing was talking to Norma. I immediately felt like I might be able to reason with her, so I tried. I told her, yeah, I basically tried to convince her, you don't have to worry about me. I'll do what I can to keep things calm, which, of course, I do kind of understand. Yeah, Sam did not keep things calm, but then, like, think about her situation, though. I don't know. I felt like she made sense, and I wanted to keep her and her family as safe as at all possible. Anyway, I think the let's see. But yeah, I tried answering the various questions honestly when talking to Norma, though I did feel like I fucked up when Norma said, "We'll, okay, radio signal. Well, we'll look into that, and then she says, "Oh, don't worry. We'll just check if they need help." I was thinking, yeah, I'm not sure I believe you. I did really like the concept of this, dock town. That was genuinely a cool idea. And yeah, people go there to trade. and there's regular people there. Not everyone there has a gun and is going around, killing people. And let's see, I think wait, was this after we already had the bit where Sam and Michonne talk? I tried to talk Michonne, talk Sam out of fighting back, but ultimately, yeah, she got free, and then I was like, okay, fine, I'll help attack, Randall, because maybe we'll be able to get away, or maybe at least we'll get enough of an upper hand that because I was genuinely kind of worried if I didn't do anything and Sam attacked on her own that she might get killed or something. She said Norma is the one telling Randall to do these awful things. When she said that, I was like, I'm not sure that's true. And then talking to Norma, it seemed like, I guess this isn't true, but then later it did feel like, I don't know, maybe there is but certainly Randall seemed to be the one who was more out of control. And patriarchy and misogyny got Norma blamed for some of that. Now, I think, that's when they bring up, well, let's see. Yeah, I think that's when Greg is there, and I'm afraid I forget the guy's name, but he gets too anxious and ends up shooting Greg, and then Randall insults him so now who's out of control? Yeah, because you keep pushing, you fucking asshole. And I talked Sam out of attacking the guy and not and told her you're not going to feel better if you kill someone over this. And we managed to convince the guy to help us escape. Really appreciate the very casual and just accepting LGBTQ plus representation. Clearly these two guys are not straight. I don't know if they're gay or bi, but they are a couple, and it's not treated as something awful. This could so easily, they could have had Randall be the only, non-straight man, for example, and, there are people who think that, gay men are inherently more violent, which is just ridiculous. It's again that thing of there's a thing in the Bible. I can never remember what's called in English, but you notice the tiny little splinter of sin that your neighbor has, but you ignore the pillar or whatever that word is that you yourself have. Something like that. A lot of the worst things in the world were done by, and are done, and will be done by cishet white men. I mean, right now, Epstein files, very, very telling. I think that brings us to, I saw someone note that Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files more than Harry Potter in all 7 books and Jesus in the Bible, which I hope makes an impression on some conservative Christians. Anyway, I think that might bring us to, let's see, so right, Greg lied, and I did say, I told the truth, and that got Greg in trouble, which I did feel bad about, but it was also this thing of well, I mean, there's only so much I can do to protect someone who's lying and not coordinating their lies with me, And so we are able to escape. Very clever that, the guy who shot Greg wants to make up for it. So, and he, he talks to his partner, and they're like, okay, sure, we'll both help you, and they distract one of the guards. And I also thought it worked well that, in escaping, you set fire to this, I mean, you didn't mean to. And it is at the end of the day, this other person is standing right by all this, flammable stuff. And there is a flare gun involved. And it's I mean, how else is this going to end? But still, I understood why Norma was so determined to get revenge after that. I think that brings us to, yeah, one of the things about Sam, like, as soon as we got onto land, she genuinely really tried to help. Like, she could so easily, like, there was a part where like, essentially she could have abandoned Michonne. She could have tricked her or something, or just continued being really rude or something, but she genuinely did care. It's just that, she has to warm up to someone before yeah. And yeah, the shortcut was indeed very, very tense. And I appreciate this thing of, like, yeah, after, Sam and Michonne are able to get up there. And if I recall, didn't Michonne get wounded and then Sam helps her to get the rest of the way, even though she could just abandon her there? But yeah, one of Randall's enormous people try to climb, and then it starts to collapse, or it does end up collapsing. That helps explain why we get some time. They do end up getting there. I did not ask how they found it. I do wonder a little bit, but I chose a different dialogue option for that. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, I mean, so as I've already mentioned, I think the flashbacks could work if they were just spread out over more hours of gameplay. I did appreciate, yeah, like, there at the start, you have Michonne in her business attire, and then there at the end we realize, oh, she left for business. She had business at a business. And, that's, yeah. But so later, yeah, I'm slightly unclear on if she did end up going back, or if it's just that it's haunting her that she was never able to go back. Maybe it was just not safe to go back. There were way too many walkers because city, But yeah, we see the apartment almost immediately in the game and realize, oh, maybe they died here, or maybe, something else happened. But and yeah, gradually we'll see a little bit more of that over the course of it. I had wanted to try to open the door, but unfortunately, I don't even know if anything would have happened in one of the flashbacks, but I forget. Yeah, there was something else that I did, and that apparently did, instead of, yeah, that's, I think it's it was the season 4 was when they added a thing where it tells you, hey, if you do this, it will have consequences, so do everything else before you do this, and maybe consider not even doing this. There might be another way to proceed. Anyway, I think that pretty much covers, let's see, yeah, I think, yeah, so we arrive at the house, I guess it is. And yeah, the wait, am I remembering wrong? Was it Sam who took a bullet? I guess it was Sam who took the bullet. Anyway, yeah. I still maintain Sam, in my branch, did just enough that I personally didn't feel like she was just, like, terrible or something. And yeah, I generally tried to build as positive a relationship with the various characters over the course of this as I could. Now, that brings us to the part, let's see, brings us to, yeah, so the some conversations with the members of the family. One of them apologizes for shooting, is relieved she missed. And, I talked to the kids, and, they are, of course, upset about Greg. And then not long after, their father also dies. And that was also very, yeah, this thing of, like, just because he just got done saying the only family they have left is me, and that, other than each other is me. And then he shot fucking Randall, man. And right, I told the the different members of the family when they asked yeah, I'm traumatized because of my daughters. I felt that it was right for Michonne to open up. That was another thing. I did see at least one person said that they felt like it was practically character assassination because some of the dialogue options are not anything like what Michonne would say. And I do understand that is one of the things with, she's such a well-defined character in other media that to have you be able to shape her this much does feel, yeah. What was the other thing? There was definitely at least one other thing of the... Yeah, I think that's when the... So yes, the other... Wait. No, yeah. So yeah, after the father is killed, and before they arrive with more people, you have the thing where, yeah, I talked to so the kid hiding in the closet was asking for his father. I couldn't quite bear to tell him, so I said, your father can't come right now, and he did seem sad later. It looked like he felt like I had lied to him, but it's not really my place as Michonne to tell the kid that. But yeah, and I did not stop her from burying her father. And yeah, and I that's what I told the other adult. I'm afraid I forget her name, but yeah. And I told her, you should stay for the kids, stay together for the kids. That's a horrible idea, by the way. There are people who grew up with parents who did not get divorced who said, I wish my parents had gotten divorced because they clearly hated each other's guts. Anyway, I think yeah, and I tried to help Sam during the eulogy. I told her, try to say what you felt about him. And yeah, once Randall and the others arrived, I chose to not torture Randall, much less kill him. And yeah, every time that I got the chance to de-escalate, I did. I tried to get him to help via the radio. He fucked me over, so I stopped transmitting that. And yeah, I responded, he killed an innocent man, when rather than pretend that Randall was completely unharmed or something, or like threaten more or something. Because again, I thought maybe Norma might listen to reason. Yeah, I think that brings us to the... Yeah, when I talked to the various members of the family, I didn't push, I did not force the kid, because he said he didn't want a gun in his hand. And I was thinking, if I tell him he's going to end up shooting himself or someone that he cares about. And apparently there is, like, I saw at least one Steam review that said, oh, Sam gets her entire family killed by the end, which, I mean, I guess in that player's branch, like in mine, both of the children survived, and so did the other woman whose name I still don't quite remember. In my branch, the people related to Sam who died were the father and Greg. Yeah, I left ammo with the other woman in the family, but I didn't push her to, yeah. And so once there was the attack, I tried again to keep things as calm as possible. Like, I revealed Randall almost immediately. As soon as, I think it was the very first time I got the option to reveal him or to say some things, I revealed him. And I like he really works well as this just incredibly hateable villain, yeah, the things he says, he's trying to taunt Michonne into killing him and saying she's fucked either way. And then when we, bring him out, he's like acting like we also bound or like we gagged him. I guess he is bound. That's what yeah, he acts like he's gagged. You know, once he does start talking to Norma, I felt obliged to tell her that's what he was bound to say. And yeah, I really appreciated that. Like, yeah, let's see. One of Norma's was shot, and Norma was like, "Fair enough. Randall shot one of yours. One of yours shot one of mine. Maybe we're even now. But ultimately, yeah, it wasn't quite. I did finish her off. It just felt wrong to leave her like that. I'm not saying she's like a good person, but it just, yeah. And I think that does. Yeah, I also appreciate the dynamic when, so the kids are like, Mom, please stay. And Michonne is like, I'm sorry, I have to go. I told them I have to go. I'm sorry. And the father is like, just let her go. And I told him, can we just have a minute together, please? You don't have to make this more difficult, But yeah, ultimately, I did tell them I can't stay. I can't come with you, And I did think that was a part where the flashbacks worked. The intercutting between the reality of Sam saying, you have to come with, the house is burning down, and, Michonne trying to come to terms with she might never see these girls ever again, and it hurts. I let Sam help me out of the house, and let's see. I think that pretty much covers. Yeah, and near the end, I told Pete, hey, you helped me a lot. And when he said you should go back to your people, I said, I think you're right. Yeah, I think those were all the different choices. I'm trying to think of. I also thought it really worked that it was only near the very end that you get to see the children without this like heavy shadow, and where you can actually see their eyes and such, and that also helps establish like this is different. Like this is the big, make it or break it. Like, are you as Michonne ready to leave them behind? Because you've spent the entire game every so often seeing them somewhere, and that I thought it worked. This thing of like, because apparently on the boat in the dock town, I'm not sure the toy was even there. She was looking at different things that were actually there, and then suddenly hallucinating, flashbacking that one of the kids' toys was there, So, yeah, I think that might bring us to the yeah, and I super appreciate this game trying to help people process grief. I think that is an extremely important thing for media to do, because there's so many people who just will not talk about it. And I do think the ending works, at least in my branch. It's just, yeah, too many flashbacks overall over the course of it. I think that does pretty much cover. I'm not sure I have anything else to really say. I tried to reassure Sam that it wasn't her fault. She ended up crying in Michonne's arms over that when, after Greg died, or was killed, rather. I think... Let's see... Yeah, I think that does pretty much cover the entire thing. So yeah, I don't really have anything to add about, I thought it was very cool each time. I never tired of using Michonne's machete. Each time that was very, very cool. And let's see, oh, right. I don't know if it makes a difference, but when I heard a voice crying out, I responded, where are you? Because like, I think at least one of the options was like, who is that or something, and it's like, I mean, it's definitely not one of Randall's or Norma's though, so it's someone I want to save, you know. Let's see. No, yeah, I think that does cover all. Yeah. So I guess I've made it clear. I didn't think the story was like the most amazing here. It did feel a little bit harsh. There was one point where one of the characters, I think it was it even to Michonne? I think, you know, they were probably thinking I was lying as Michonne or something. I forget if it was Randall, but it was someone working for him, if not him, or working for Norma. But one of them was like, "That's enough of your bullshit story.